How's it going, Thieves fans? We got another episode of the ThievesTalk podcast today. Today it is just going to be me. It's going to be a little bit of a quicker episode this go around, um, mainly because we have just one match this weekend, and it was a good match for the Thieves. We were able to get another win, a 3-2 victory. Another close one though, another little bit of a scary one. When we played Heretics, we went up and kept it kept it interesting to say the least. Taking it to a game 5 terminal, which this match ended up doing the same thing. We will get into that, but yeah, I just figured today we'll mostly just be talking about this match up against the Minnesota ROKKR, and then we will take a kind of like quick look at the upcoming matches that the Thieves are going to have this next week, and then maybe take an even smaller look at the matches that we have the week after that. So yeah, let's dive right into this matchup against the Minnesota ROKKR. So, like I said, Thieves were able to take the series. We took it 3-2. The thing that we have to keep in mind is the Thieves had another situation where they went up 2-0, and they were on control, which, as we said before, control has kind of been their good mode. So, going 2-0 into this control, you would think would be a good thing for us. And unfortunately, this was kind of the first map where I felt the Thieves like didn't look great, in this series specifically. And it's on an invasion control, which we talked about last time. That this ended up being the map and mode that the Thieves banned against the Miami Heretics, which is kind of shocking based on how they played on invasion control with the old roster. So I think that's something that this new roster is kind of trying to get a hang of. Um, and as you can see here, they fell 3-1 in this one. That's where kind of the swing mode comes into play. And it's a little scary when that happens because the Thieves are looking better at hardpoint. Even when they lose, their matches are a lot closer than what they used to be. So I think that's a huge step in the right direction. The biggest problem right now is just that they're still not consistent enough that, as a fan, I don't necessarily feel comfortable with them going into a map 4 hardpoint, uh, because it's a little risky. It's a little risky. But you know the first hard points that the Thieves have played in the last 2 matches have been great. They were able to pull out some close ones, but they were able to get that big first map win, and I think that's helped them a lot so far. So I think as they keep kind of building on that, I'm hoping that that will kind of trend in the right direction for their map 4 hard points as well. Retro, appreciate you stopping in again, man. It's huge. We got another win. I mean, the fact that we're 2-1 on the split when this schedule is supposed to be harder than what our last one was, I think that's a huge start for us. I know people have talked about there's a possibility, like a decent possibility, I think, that we still make winners bracket, because a lot of teams are kind of just getting beat up on right now. So the fact that we at least have 2 wins under our belt, pretty early on in this major, I think is huge. Um, Hope you're doing well. I appreciate that. I hope you're doing well as well, Retro. Always good to see you in here. Uh, but yeah, ROKKR's 0-5, and they're not a bad team by any means. Like the fact that ROKKR's 0-5, I think they're really just going through this weird stint for them. I was watching the flank the other day, and they were talking about how they think Awakening is kind of being he might be the guy that has to go, basically, to put it bluntly, in that they believe, at least Aches especially believes, that they just need to fill in that spot and that they'll be a much better team for it. I haven't watched enough of just ROKKR themselves to really speak in depth on that. Um, but I mean, even when you look at the stats here, he's a -12, and he's supposed to be kind of like the kill whore guy. Um, and if you're consistently not really having great series, that's not really the most ideal. So in some regard, I can kind of see where they're coming from. Um, and when you look at the side of Thieves, Nasty was the only one who went negative, and he had 18,000 damage. Like he was, I think he tweeted it out, or I think it was Ghosty. Ghosty had even said like he was doing all the damage for everybody to get the kills. So just like team stats right here, I would say this is the best stats we have seen from the entire roster, from the Thieves so far, and hopefully it just keeps getting better. I love to see that. Again, yes, he's minus 15, but putting in 18k damage, like there's nothing to complain about. Like he was doing his job. He just wasn't able to finish the kills. So I have no complaints on it on a stat line like that. Some people might just look at a .83 and be like, ah, look at nasty. But when you look at the fact that he had 18k damage, that is crazy. It is impressive work. Great chance for winners to split, and 18k damage is great. Great teamwork this map set. Yeah, I completely agree. You know, it'll be very interesting to see how this winners situation might play out. Just because, like I said, there's a lot of teams who kind of are just getting beat up on, and the top teams are they're just that much better. It seems like so. It's a little nerve wracking because that means that even if Thieves make it to winners, odds are they're going to play somewhat of a juggernaut team and might be sent straight to losers bracket. So we'll have to see how all that goes, but we can kind of dive into that a little more later. Let's get into this invasion map one. As you can see here, the Thieves won 250 to 205. Invasion is an interesting hardpoint map, to say the least. I think it's just an interesting map in general. There's been a lot of Invasion being played. I think a lot of people are kind of over it. Watching, playing, I think it's a whole mix of things. But I'm not going to complain if the Thieves take a win on Invasion Hardpoint. I mean, if they get a win in a Hardpoint, I don't mind. Like I said, 250 to 205. It was pretty close throughout a lot of the map. They definitely had some situations where, again, I felt as if they weren't rotating early enough. But this time around, they did a better job of breaking. I know the flank kind of broke down one of their breaks on the P3 hardpoint, or the A control site. And I don't even know like how exactly it all worked out, because even the flank had brought it up that they got first blooded on the break. Like the Thieves got first blooded on the break, and we're still somehow to break in and get a pretty solid hold out of that. I want to say it was about like a 40-second hold off of that. And they were down at that point, I want to say like 50 to like 10 or less maybe. So that was a big break out of them. Again, like I was nervous at the fact that they didn't rotate early on it. But when they were able to break in and actually find a break, which is something we have not really seen from the Thieves, that was definitely a good sign. As I've said before, like the biggest thing for me is just kind of keeping an eye on these little things that you can see the differences in the way the Thieves had been playing versus how they're playing now. And that is definitely one of those things where they weren't doing that before. So even just one little break here and one little break there, I think a lot of that is going to go a long way, especially as the team continues to mesh and just get better and better together. I think we're going to see a lot better hard points out of these guys, because even when you're looking at the kills, Afro finally had a really good series when it comes to hard points. I know we talked about it last stream that Afro tends to do really good on the 2-3-5 game modes, and his hard points have kind of been a little slower. But this time around, he had a great overall series. He did really well in both of the hard points, if I remember correctly. And he did really well in the searches and had a solid control. So, you know, I mean, if we're getting Afro to be doing stuff like that, I know he mentioned that having Kremp alongside him, I think, has helped him a lot. With Kremp being the guy who I think has been playing a little slower, Afro's been able to play a little faster, which I think is more of his play style. I think it's definitely working out in the Thieves' favor, and hopefully that will continue to snowball. Their listening was great. They finally had some 3-2-1 calls too. Yeah, I don't know how much of their listening I was able to hear, because I was not doing like a watch party, but I was watching it with my brother and then one of my other friends, and so I didn't get to hear too much of that. I might have to go back and take a listen in on that. No pun intended. And then Afro's masterclass, he was cooking. Yeah, he really was, man. Like I give a ton of credit to Afro. Um, we talked about it before earlier in the season. A lot of people were giving him shit. They thought, maybe he was the guy that needed to be dropped, but he's looking pretty good. He's definitely looking pretty good. So I'm happy to see him get that hard point rolling. That was something when I was at the compound for the watch party. I had even brought up to him that his search and his control are like consistent. He always is great on those. And he even told me like, yeah, if I can get hard point figured out, like we're good. And I mean, here it looks like he was starting to get hard point figured out, and we won 250 to 205. So very happy about that. Ghosty had a 0.96, only -1, nothing crazy there. Nasty, he had a 0.89, -3, but he still had 5k damage. So like I said before, he was still putting in the shots. Maybe they just weren't all getting the kills. Um, into this map too, we have another invasion. Uh, I felt like, obviously outside of the hard point, still kind of being fresh. I wasn't sure how the Thieves were going to do on a new hard point, or especially on a new hard point map that we haven't really seen them play in a while, and definitely not on this new roster. I was a little unsure on how the triple invasion was going to play out for us. I figured Search would be the one where the Thieves kind of had it locked down, and I mean that was pretty much the case. I mean, Nasty. This was the map that Nasty had a masterclass. 10-4, 2.5 KD, which is crazy. And then you have Afro right behind him with a 1.75, 7-4. The only guy who really didn't like get too involved, it seems like, was Kremp, but I felt like he still had timely kills. Like, I know like pros will kind of talk about it, they'll joke about it, but I think there is definitely some truth to it, that it doesn't always matter how many you get, it's when you get them. And I feel like Kremp in this map specifically, like, yeah, he didn't get a lot, but I felt like he got the ones he needed. Um, and obviously that's all you can ask for. Plus having multiple guys in the positive, and both Afro and Nasty doing their thing. Great sight to see. I think this Nasty and Afro duo is kind of coming to fruition a little bit. You know, we love to see a search and destroy win from the Thieves, and then especially after a hard point win, man, putting us up 2-0 is always big. Then we got this third invasion map, and this, like I said, was the one where they just didn't have that same pizzazz, I guess. I can't think of like the best word for it, but this was their first map where they kind of got beat up on a little bit, and it's seeming like the invasion control is just not quite their thing right now, and I do believe that JCap and Shane will kind of help get that back to where it was before, or maybe close to where it was before, because, as I've said, this coaching staff has historically been a pretty good control team, if not a really good control team, and they just know how to coach around control. And so I think right now they might be going through a little bit of a slump, but as you can see from the map one, like, we have enough like slaying power. Again, even if you just look at the damages, like, we have enough to get the kills. So I'm really not worried about that. I think it's just getting two new guys. Those guys are going to have to figure out the best way to mesh with Ghosty and Afro, who, obviously were on that roster before, where they had a really good control record. So I think once that kind of gets tuned in a little bit, I think we might have a little bit of a better chance at possibly seeing some 3-0s, maybe 3-1s in the future. Because man, going 3-2 is it's a stressful one. Little mistakes added up, played on the back foot for map 3. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as you can see, everybody on the Thieves is negative, and you know, when you have a specific life count, that's not the most ideal situation. You're not gonna you're not gonna win many rounds with that. It wasn't a great map out of them. I feel like they did have some situations where, again, it was kind of like little stuff that maybe if they played something a little differently, maybe it goes in another direction. But for the most part, I mean, as you can see here, like vivid accuracy plus 13 plus 11, and then Lens with a plus 6. Like those guys, they just weren't really missing. Like there was a lot of times where the guys just didn't get trades, and vivid accuracy or Lens were getting 2-piece, maybe even a 3-piece. Like they were hitting their shots, and the Thieves weren't able to really counter it. So that was the first map that we fell. And I would also like to point out that the CEO, the big boss himself, Nadeshot, decided to tweet out that the Thieves are up 2-0. There's no way they lose, right? There's no way they get reverse swept. And then this proceeded to happen. So we'll just keep that jinx in mind. We have to keep an eye on Nadeshot from now on. Can't be doing that anymore, Nade. Come on. First time we lost invasion control defense 2 this year. Yeah, I mean it's rough. Obviously not ideal, but at some point the records have to kind of be broken. As you can see with like the Ultra and FaZe series, they were on a huge streak of hard points, and FaZe was just able to break that streak. Now we got the Skid Row map 4. ROKKR was able to take this one 250 to 231, and not to put any blame on anybody here, but I'm sure this has been talked about in the Thieves camp. I know this has been talked about outside of the Thieves camp from the flank. The breakdown probably talked about it. I haven't gotten to watch the breakdown from this past weekend, but this was a very winnable map. In fact, the fact that we lost it, I think, is very, very, very rough. We were trailing a lot throughout the map, and towards the end we started to kind of like battle back and forth, and we started kind of keeping it close. And then we got down to the like the field hard point, or it's what, P5, the last hard point on Skid Row, before you go back to P1. And man, we were up. I mean, we were up, man. We were able to break in from apps to get the Barber Hill, and then we even had the rotation for new. They had the setup, like everybody was in the right positions, and oh man, it's so tough. And I don't mean to harp on it, because I'm sure that, like I said, this has been talked about, this has been discussed, but Kremp gets a cruise missile. Huge play out of Kremp. Absolutely huge play to get the cruise missile. He plays his life. He gets the spawns for the Thieves. He gets the cruise missile. He does everything right. He does everything you need him to do in that moment. He does it. And at that point, you see our setup. You see he gets the cruise missile. You know the hill. Everything just felt like, all right, we got this shit. We got it in the bag. Thieves wipe. 4 dead. It's like, great. Now nobody from the other team is even on the map anymore. We got everybody in the right positions where they need to be. They just hold their irons, get the kills that try to break in, and if somehow Minnesota breaks, we have a streak in the back pocket. We can always break back in. We go 4 down for Minnesota. We kill all 4. And off of the spawn, Kremp decides to use his cruise missile. It gets nothing, and Minnesota goes on to break the hard point, and the Thieves end up losing 250 to 231. So, I'm sure they're to like as a teammate, like if I were their teammate, you know, it's not just Kremp's fault. There's other things that happen throughout the map that I'm sure you could, you can criticize and say, hey, these are things we should have done differently. We could have paid a little more attention to this. We could have done this here, whatever. But that's just a really rough situation for Kremp, man. I felt bad for him afterwards, really, because I knew that that was not going to be great for him. And you know, if we win that map, we win a 3-1 and we look a lot more decisive than what we did. But losing in that fashion was really really rough. And I'm sure he's heard a lot about it, so I feel bad for him. Um, but yeah, it was not the best way to lose a map. I'll say that. That's for sure. Very crucial one-on-one on Barber for about 20 seconds from Ghosty versus Lins. We lost it and needed that 20. Yeah, see, like that's another situation where you can't really just pinpoint just Kremp situation. I think obviously that's going to be the thing that is like on top of everybody's mind because it's I don't want to say like recency bias, but it was the most recent thing to end the map. Um, and that's a situation where it's kind of like the icing on the cake that you think like, okay, we're good. And then when it doesn't go that way, you know, that's who kind of gets the blame. But yeah, you could argue at that point, well, if Ghosty gets his kill on Lens, maybe we get this extra 20 and things go a little differently. Now we don't have to worry about, them breaking P5 as much. Like as long as we get a little bit of time here, like we're chilling. Um, so yeah, there's definitely some other stuff that you can bring up. That was probably the biggest thing that stuck out. And like I said, I feel bad for him because he did everything right leading up to that. He did everything right, man. Like I was giving him so much credit. I still do give him credit. Like I said, he did everything right leading up to that, and then just one play kind of threw it out the window. But it's all right. We'll talk about why it's all right in this map 5 here because as you can see, Kremp said, "You know what? Fuck map 4. We don't need it." And he came out and he went 9-4 and had the biggest 1v2 clutch to win the map. The Thieves won 6-3. It definitely felt a hell of a lot closer than 6-3 while watching it. Accuracy, only one to even break even for them. Linz had a rough one. Vivid had a rough one. This was the one map Awakening actually had a decent map. It just, a little too late, I think. Afro also had a huge play. This is it's a very offensive sided map, if I'm not mistaken. It's an offensive sided map because you can just rush down. It's really hard to retake. And there was, I want to say it was round, let's see, we won 6-3. It was either round 6 or 7, I think. Round 6 or 7. I'm not 100% sure. But it was a 4v4 retake on the B bomb site. And Afro's on Eskies, and he just slides out. Chows gets 2 kills by bomb. Now it's a 2v4. Then we kill, I believe it was Accuracy, who was not in Burger, but he was closer to Burger. Kill Accuracy. And now Vivid's out of the play. And Thieves are able to pick him off and close out the round. And that was a huge play out of Afro. Very big to get a defensive sided win. And 2 rounds after that, that's when Kremp stepped it up big time. They were able to, well, Kremp, he made a huge play. They went down in numbers early, and I want to say it was Kremp and Ghosty last alive. And They didn't have a read on Kremp, and so Kremp flanked back a plane, was able to get inside and got a pick in plane, and then was able to dip out. And I think he saw Awakening. I don't know when exactly he saw him, but I'm pretty sure he saw him before he like left the plane, and he jumps out, like slide side a plane, and Awakening looks from like Dreams kind of over the mid hall, and Kremp is able to just pick him, get that final kill to end the map and end the series in the Thieves' favor. So, I was going nuts. I was stoked that Kremp was able to get that kill. That is why I think can't give Kremp too much shit, because he made some big plays in the search and destroy to help get us to that win. So maybe had a rough moment in, or we'll say it was a learning experience in the Skid Row, um, but came out and had a masterclass of a map 5. So he definitely iced up, to help us get that victory in the end. And ROKKR is not a bad team to get a win against. Like I said, sure, right now, they're 0-5, not having the best split, but they were what, top 5 in the last major, so it's a pretty good win from the Thieves. Because same thing with Miami. Like Miami's not having the best time right now either, but it's not like they were a bad team. Like I think both Miami and both Minnesota are in a bit of a slump, like, or they've been like heading towards a slump. And I think the Thieves winning and beating both of those teams probably does not help it. But we can look at the schedule here. I might try and pull up the standings first. You can look at the standings here. The Thieves have moved up. Those last two wins from the Thieves have bumped us up, to now be in 10th place. We are no longer on the bottom. And every win is 10 CDL points. So, we have, it is, hold on. We have FaZe next, which not going to be easy. And then on Sunday, we have Vegas Legion, which Vegas has been looking pretty good too. So that's definitely going to be a hard matchup. I tweeted it out earlier. I think the Thieves are in a really, really, really good spot if they're able to split the weekend. If they somehow were to beat FaZe and lose to Vegas, or lose to FaZe, beat Vegas, either way, if they go 1-1, I think they're in a huge spot. Obviously, I would love to see them win both. But if they can just find a way to split the weekend, ideally, I think what would happen is they probably lose to FaZe, and then, they clutch one out against Vegas. That would be huge for us. That would put us, 3-2 at that point. And I feel like at that point, we're basically guaranteed winners. Because then the next weekend, we would be going up against LAG. And then, let's see. And then also against Toronto Ultra. And that will be our last match of the major, which Toronto Ultra is not going to be easy. FaZe and Ultra are definitely the two hardest teams on this list, for our schedule. But, as Nate Schatzberner says, we played FaZe hard earlier in the year, so hopefully we can do the same. And I completely agree. We did play FaZe hard. We played FaZe hard with a team that only won one series in the last major, whereas now we've won 2. And, we have these newer players who are, I think, finally starting to figure some things out. I think there's a possibility that the Thieves can beat FaZe. Do I think it's probable? I don't think it's probable, but I think it's possible. I think it has potential to be a really exciting series. The concerning part, though, is that Ultra was stomping FaZe in the first major, or the first split of the year, whereas FaZe just came out and stomped Ultra. So maybe FaZe has taken some steps in the right direction. um, which in turn would probably make it harder for us this go around. But I'm really hoping to see a good fight against FaZe, because even though the series that the Thieves played against FaZe in the first major was a 3-0, it was way closer than probably what it looked, and probably what it should have been too. So I'm really hoping that with this new roster, our better hard points, that maybe we can spice some things up a little bit and have a little bit of a longer series. LAG for some reason turns it up against us as always. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like LAG for some reason just has our number. It's like an LA curse or something. I don't know. You don't think Ultra looked or took that game serious? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like teams take every game serious. I feel like it's kind of hard to say that. Like, you know, I feel like every team comes out there to win, especially if you're going up against FaZe. I think maybe I think the biggest thing was that for that match, I think FaZe had like their maps, like the maps that Ultra doesn't really play or they're just not as good at. So I think that benefited FaZe a lot. And then obviously like I think FaZe is just inevitably going to get better. Like they're they're world class team. Like they're gonna get better. They have that core three that they've had forever, and then they picked up Draza, who has been one of the best flex players in the game. Um, so I mean, naturally over time they're just gonna get better. And like I said, I think at some point teams teams who maybe aren't necessarily better than other teams are just gonna start winning. Um, like just because that's the parity of the league. That's how stuff goes. Like, um, it's not always going to be like the number one team beats everybody. So I think it was just kind of like probably an off day for Ultra. I know Scrappy has, I think, not been very pleased with the game, and in turn, that's probably kind of checking him a little bit. Obviously, I don't know. I'm not in his head, so I can't say for sure. But I've seen him tweet out that he hates the game and all this kind of stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's causing some issues for the roster just a little bit, or at least his play. Um, but yeah, this match is going to be rough. I'm hoping we can at least make it an interesting one because again, that's like a little victory I think for the Thieves. Any steps we can see in the right direction, I think, is a huge positive. And then the match against the Legion, I think, will be the most like reasonable for us to win out of the matches that are left. But the tough part is Vegas has been playing better. So we'll kind of just have to see where we go, and hopefully this FaZe match, if we lose, doesn't kind of like take the guys too much out of it mentally. Hopefully they kind of just look at it as like, all right, let's go next, and are able to take down this Vegas Legion squad. And then for the next weekend, LAG, hopefully we're just able to break the curse. Hopefully that's where we're able to head to, because I know LAG has been having some struggles recently as well. So hopefully we can take advantage of that. I think so far we've done a pretty good job of taking advantage of teams that are struggling. Obviously, we've made it very risky. So, hopefully we stop doing that at least, and we just finish out a series earlier so we don't have to have a heart attack. But, if we can just finish out a series against another struggling team, that will be huge. There's a world where we finish this, 4-3. Um, because I think it's going to be really tough to beat Ultra. Same with FaZe. Like I said, I think it's the same kind of deal. I think there's a chance that the Thieves play Ultra like competitively, but I just feel like Ultra and FaZe are like those two S tier teams where they're just kind of like a step above everybody else. So it'll take a lot for them to beat those guys. Um, So I think the biggest thing is if we can beat Legion and beat LAG, I mean, we're in a damn good position at that point. Um, you know, because two, LAG is right above us, and Vegas is only 15 points above us. So if we're able to beat both of them, that should move us up pretty solid. Um, and I mean, this is the thing, right? Like if we're looking for the playoff cut, like if we're trying to make the playoff cutoff, we're really not that far behind. This whole section right here is really tight. It's a really tight race. So if the Thieves are able to start getting wins against any of these teams, any teams from 5 to 12, that is huge for us. All that does at that point is put everybody else just a little bit below. And then obviously, if we can have a really good major, that'll help a lot. Because I mean, Ultra and FaZe, like we said, they're the S tier teams. They're kind of just pulling away with everything. Optic's trying to knock on the door, and then the subliners are trying to knock on the door of Optic, and then everybody else is kind of just like slowly, slowly making their way. Um, so yeah, if we can beat LAG and beat Vegas, not only is it good for this major specifically, putting us at hopefully at the very least a 4-3 record, um, but it also helps with moving us up in the rankings. Because like I said, it is 10 points per win, right? Because if that's the case, that puts us at 60, um, and that moves us up over LAG and over Vegas, depending on how they finish out the rest of their series. Obviously, the more they lose, the better it helps us out. But yeah, that's kind of how we're looking right now. You know, the upside is our searches have been pretty solid. So I think that's that's good news for us. And then if we can kind of keep up with this map one hard point, even if it's just a competitive hard point, even if we lose and it's just a competitive hard point, I think that's a huge confidence thing. Um, you know, for the Thieves, and if it's up against FaZe and we have a close map one against FaZe, I think that's huge for the rest of the series for us because they have not been great at hardpoint. So if we're able to fight it out really close against a team like FaZe, that has to be a huge momentum boost for the team. So I'm really hoping that we can at least battle in the first hard point against them and then kind of see how the rest of these maps play out. But it's just so hard to tell with how good FaZe is. You know, you just you can't count them out. They're always going to be dominating the league. As much as it stung, losing 250 230 was way better than being blown out. Yeah, I completely agree. The Thieves had been getting blown out in pretty much all of our hard points. There was really only one hard point map that we were close on that we lost. I know we won one hard point, but there was only one other one that we lost where we were fairly close. The rest were all pretty much blowouts. So the fact that we're keeping up a little bit is huge. And, now we're even pulling out some wins. This was, again, a situation where we very easily could have had 2 hardpoint wins in a series. And I feel like that's crazy to say compared to where we were at in the first major. So, like I said, steps in the right direction. Really can't take that for granted. Like, can't be too hard on these guys when they're making as big of strides as they are, with a brand new roster. I mean, that's huge for them. But yeah, if there's any questions that you guys have in the chat, um, I'm more than happy to answer them. I think that's kind of the most that I'm going to talk about today. I don't think there's really too much more on that. Next weekend we have 2 matches, so we'll probably be able to talk about a little more. And then the weekend after that, we have another 2 matches. So the next 2 weeks, we should be able to have some pretty solid episodes, get to chat about multiple series, and hopefully, at the very least, we split both weekends, so we can at least talk about some wins. And yeah, I think I'll try and think about trying some new stuff, maybe doing some more of the breakdown stuff that I did before, if that's something that you guys are interested in seeing as well. Retro, how are we feeling on Nasty? You love him. We got a solid AR duo now. Yeah, I agree. I think Nasty, as I said before, Nasty was one of those guys that in the off season I thought we should have picked him up also. I said Ghosty was our number one, and then uh, I think there were a couple other people here and there that were free agents at the time that I thought could have meshed with the team well. But when Nasty was available, I thought Nasty would be a great pickup for the Thieves. Um, he played great in Modern Warfare 2, and we needed another AR, and I felt like he was a guy that could do that really well. Um, Obviously, I hadn't known that we were gonna pick up Afro either, but now where we were at after the roster change, I think realizing that Afro and Nasty have played together, they have some experience on the same team. That I think bringing those two guys together um, is huge because I think Afro is a great player as well, and bringing somebody on who has some chemistry with him, whereas before like Cammy had only played with him for a little bit, whereas I think Nasty has a little bit more time with him. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Nasty played under Shane for a little bit, or at least Afro did. So there's a couple different connections with the a lot of the UK boys. But yeah, Nasty's great, man. I've loved watching him play. Um, you know, Again, even with these stats, like he just shoots it, dude. Like he shoots nukes. It seems like. Yeah, he was their coach for a little bit. I I don't remember exactly when it was. But I know it was before he came to Thieves. He was there with the Ravens, and it was when they were still London, obviously London Royal Ravens. Um, but that was something I was looking up at one point because I thought that was accurate because I knew he coached for the Ravens. I just wasn't sure when it was, so I didn't know if like Afro or Nasty played under him at any point. But I looked it up and I don't remember which one it was, but I think it was only one of them. I think the other one had already. I think it had to have been Nasty because I think Afro was already at Minnesota at that point. So I think it was Nasty that played under him, which would also make sense. Because if they were, looking for another player to pick up and they were scouting, Shane's gonna have a little bit of intel on him, and then if they're trying to look to win, like start winning pretty quickly, finding somebody that you have experience with as a coach, like coach to player relationship, I think would be huge. Um, and then a guy who just, like I said, he shoots nukes. Like you love to have that. And I think, like I said, Ghosty was the number one for me. Having him on the team already, I think he's kind of the guy that the Thieves wanted to build around, and they're able to, they're kind of able to do that. And I think we're going to start seeing these guys kind of on the upwards trend. I don't necessarily think if we're talking like big picture, I don't think we're going to be like a top three team, but I think we have the potential to be a top five team. I think the top three teams are just like they're just too up there at this point. There's a lot of like veteran players, and a lot of guys who have just been in the league for a while who are just like superstar talent. So uh, there's going to be some difficulty in trying to break like the top three. I feel like it's going to be so overwhelmingly um, Ultra, Phase, and Optic in whatever order. I think that might kind of like shift around a little bit. And then, depending on how New York continues to do, I think New York will be within that top 5 range as well. But like I said, if we look at the standings again, like everybody below that top 4 group is kind of up for grabs. And I think based on a lot of the inconsistencies that we're seeing from a lot of the other teams, I think skill wise, I think the Thieves have a chance to be up there in that 4 and 5 range. So I think if we keep heading in the right direction, and then obviously we'll have to see about like strength of schedule and things like that, because I don't know how the schedule is going to be after that. LAG, Boston, Ravens, Ultra, Phase, Vegas, New York. So the next split looks a little easier, but it's still going to be tough. There's no free wins. That's for sure. Too much parity in the league. No free wins. Oh, I just realized I didn't change the screen over. That's on me. I made a goof. We need a really good run for this major just to help with the placings. Yeah. I'm really interested to see like where the Thieves will kind of like square up with with some of the other teams based on the bracket. Obviously that's not something we're going to be able to take a look at until we get to these last matches. I know at some point we'll kind of get an idea based on where some teams will be, maybe like barring a couple like situations here and there, but we're just not far along enough yet to be able to say exactly where the Thieves will face off. But that was something that Flank was talking about, like I said, with even if Thieves win and get into winners bracket, which it's looking like they probably will, odds are they're going to have to go up against Optic, Phase, Toronto. So, if we're able to beat one of those teams, that's fucking nuts. But if we're not, then obviously we're going to have to try and make at least a little bit of a loser's run where it just gets really nerve-wracking because everything is such a toss-up at that lower level of teams. It seems like at that point any series could go any direction, and that's really scary when you're in losers bracket. So hopefully we don't have to worry too much about that. As long as we get a longer event this time around, I'm happy. I mean, the upside with winners is you're guaranteed 2 series, which is already better than the last one. So that's a big upside for us, is we at least get to watch 2 series as long as we make winners. So no complaints there. Just hopefully we don't get practically one and done with, a 2 and done. Hopefully we can at least get maybe 3, 4 series. That would be nice. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting major, especially if we are able to make winners bracket. So like I said, it seems like it's trending in that direction. So we'll see how all that goes. But I'm really excited. I'm really excited for all that. But yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for this week. I don't want to keep rambling too long. I know I could probably keep yapping for a long time, so I want to kind of not do that. But like I said, we're going to try and maybe go back to trying some of the breakdown stuff if that's something you guys are interested in. I feel like kind of like talking about certain moments and having visuals for it is probably pretty good. Otherwise, if you haven't watched, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. And if you have, maybe you just forgot. I know I forget a lot of stuff. I'm very forgetful. So having some type of visual to be able to show while like talking about certain situations, I think would be really good to do. and breaking that down as well. Otherwise, that's something that maybe at some point I can try like implementing into the YouTube version of the stream, um, when I just post that. But we'll kind of see about that. It all kind of depends on like my work schedule and stuff, and like when I'm available. Um, just because it's a lot harder to like make sure I have the clips and all that kind of stuff before I do the stream, because I try to get the stream done as soon as possible, after the matches for the weekend, so that way I can have the video posted up on YouTube earlier. Because I know, before I had kind of missed a week, and I just don't really want to do that. I don't like having to do that. So I try to get this stuff up as soon as possible. I don't like to do it on Sundays just because I know that's oftentimes when the flank and the breakdown do their videos or their streams, and you know nobody's gonna watch little old me while that stuff is going on, and I completely understand. So I'd rather have all this stuff going up, or do it like doing the stream either on Monday, or if the Thieves play earlier in the weekend, doing it earlier in the weekend. But I try not to do it while other Call of Duty stuff is going on, because I want everybody to be able to kind of like watch everything. So, um, that's why I do these on the Mondays, and then I try to have them posted within like the next 2 days, like ideally Tuesday, and then sometimes if I have to, I'll do it on Wednesday. Like I said, it just depends on my work schedule. So that's what we're trying to work with here. And like I said, I'm gonna keep trying to brainstorm some other ideas for stuff that we can do. And I want to try and post more to like YouTube. That's not just like the copies of the streams, basically. Um, so that's something I'm working on as well, and hopefully I'll have some stuff like that for you guys fairly soon. Um, we'll see. Like I said, we'll see how all that stuff goes. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in this week. Glad we were able to get a dub. And like I said, hopefully at the very least we can split the next 2 weekends. Have ourselves some good times watching the Thieves, and we'll be back talking about the matches, the following days after the series. So, that's gonna do it today. Appreciate everybody, and hope to see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.